tonight. Is it 9 o'clock yet? Oh, it is. 1 o'clock? I mean 9 o'clock. What am I talking
Hammer
about?
that thing.
Welcome to the March 13th, 2024 meeting of the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency. Please join me in a salute to our flag. Oh, well, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Matt just told me I've gone out of order already on the agenda. So, Tara, if you do the roll call.
Matt Conant.
Present.
Bruce Johnson.
Here.
Todd Kimmelshoe.
Here.
Bo Shepard. Mark Boomgarden.
Here.
Wade Kirchner.
Here.
Charlie Hoppin. Drew Stresser. Mike Morris.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a quorum? Okay. Public comment. I'm not going to read the language for public comment. Any public comment? Tara, online? Nothing? Okay, I see none in the audience, the massive audience we have here. So we'll move forward to consent agenda. Are there any items that any of the board members would like to pull from the consent agenda?
Move to approve consent.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. And I believe no action items this time around, but we do have several items for information. So we'll turn it over to the executive director.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So this actually is an action item. So this item is for delegation of authority to the executive director to execute project partnership agreement amendment number 1 with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board and the United States Army Corps of Engineers and associated documents for the Sutter Basin project. So what this is for the federal project, the 5-mile levee repair project between Star Bend and Laurel Avenue, essentially. This agency executed a project partnership agreement back in 2018. And that was to initiate the levee repair project, to bring in federal dollars for that project. And we executed that with our state and federal partner. So now that project is completed, and the entire Feather River West Levee project, which Sabufka and DWR advanced without any federal investment, that work is done. And we've achieved a federal credit for the work that we completed that's within the federally authorized project limits, which went up to the
99.
It went from Highway 99 all the way north to the Sunset Pump Station, essentially. So all of those levee repairs in that area are part of the federal project. So this project partnership agreement amendment is simply to transfer the federal credit that we've achieved over to the SJAFCA project. So that's what this amendment is all about. And SJAFCA will be signing their own PPA amendment with the state and the federal government to receive those funds. So what I'm asking for right now from the board is to authorize myself to execute the amendment when the time is right. And what I mean by that is we want to have our agreement with SJAFCA, the agreement that they're going to be purchasing our federal credit. We want to have that all completed, executed, and a done deal before we execute the PPA amendment. Because once we do that, that officially transfers the credit over. So we're not going to execute that amendment until our deal with SJAFCA is completed. And I'll talk about where that deal is later on in the process or in the meeting. So right now I'm asking for authority to sign the PPA amendment and the associated documents. And what those are, there are 3 certificates. Certificate of authority, which Scott Shapiro will sign. Andrea could have signed it, but we listed Scott in as general counsel. certificate regarding lobbying, which I will sign, and then self-certification of financial capability, which Spencer Morrison here at the Yuba City will sign. The Corps needs those certificates in order to run the PPA amendment up through their chain. They've already drafted it. We included a copy of the draft in the staff report. But in order to finalize that amendment, they need those certificates. So that's why I'm asking for the authority now. I wanted to package them all together so that it made sense and we got the authority to sign the PPA amendment when the time is right in the next 3 to 5 months. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, and see if there's any questions from the board.
Any comments, questions from board members?
Move to approve staff recommended action.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let me just ask for if there's any public comment. Is this on? Do we do this on?
No, it's not a Zoom.
Oh, no, so it's not a Zoom. Okay, so there's obviously no public comment. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. And I think the next 2 items are actually action item as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So consideration of the agency dental and vision insurance benefit policy.
Okay, and I'm going to have our budget manager, Seth Wurzel, walk you all through this agenda item.
Yep. Thank you very much, Michael. So the board may recall back in June when it was working through its annual review process for Michael's position, the board approved some adjustments to medical insurance at that time. Where we had sat previously prior to June with respect to medical benefits or health benefits for that matter was each employee was given a fixed dollar amount to apply toward medical and dental and vision benefits. And as a result of increasing premiums, particularly for the executive director, the cost of any premium increase was 100% allocated to the employee because the total dollar amount of benefit didn't increase on an annual basis. In order to address that, what the action the board took was to authorize that the medical plan, the benefit be provided at 100% of the employee's premium and 85% of dependent premiums for a base plan. And we did this and we focused primarily on medical because that represents the vast majority of the cost of insurance premium or health benefit premiums in general. What we didn't do at the time was address how the agency might share in the cost of dental and vision insurance. The agency's plan year for health benefits runs from April to April. And so as we embark on a new plan year, we need to address how we're going to handle, because we've removed that $1,500, or for the executive director, it was a base $1,500 a year of benefit. We removed that, and so now what we have is a scenario where we are covering health and medical benefits, but don't really have an approach for providing dental and vision insurance. And so the recommendation from staff or consulting staff, I guess for that matter, is that they apply the same rubric, the same approach for dental and vision insurance as we're applying for medical, which would be to cover 100% of the employee's premium and 85% of dependent premium for a specified plan. And for the dental insurance, that would be the Emeritus Dental PPO 5000 plan. That's the current plan that the more expensive plan that the current participants are enrolled in. And then for vision insurance, 100% of the employees' premiums and 85% dependent premiums for the VSP vision plan. In total, what this would, to the extent that the employees opted to take the most expensive plans, and they don't have to do that. If they have dependents, they might decide to take a lesser plan because they're sharing in the cost of the dependent premiums. The total fiscal impact to the agency would be about less than $2,500 a year to provide that level of benefit and make it consistent across all health benefits, insurance benefits. So that's the recommendation to move forward with authorizing the executive director to ensure that the CalChoice, our plan provider, reflects that in their benefit offerings to the agency.
Okay, questions for Seth? on the,
Could you smile so we see what you look like?
Read on your teeth.
questions for Seth? Okay, any comments?
Move to approve.
Okay, Matt, move to approve. Is there a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, and our next item is also an action item, correct?
This is just receive and
Oh, this is, okay, good. So go ahead, Seth, or do you want to introduce this, Michael?
Yeah, I'm going to quickly introduce it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then Seth will provide the bulk of the presentation. But this is the agency's annual audit. We use the same firm that City of Yuba City uses to perform their audit. I'll cut to the chase. It was a clean audit, and Seth's going to provide you the details of our audit and then roll into the financial presentation after this one. So Seth, go ahead and take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you. So included in the packet, our auditor, Badawi and Associates, provides 3 reports for the fiscal year ending June 30, 23. So there's first report is the basic financial statements and their independent auditor's report regarding those statements. The second is the auditor's communication with those charged with governance. This is basically direct communication to you folks as fiduciaries for the agency, so you understand what the scope of their work was and what they did as part of the audit. And then the last is a report on internal controls, and they're communicating that there are no material weaknesses in our internal controls. So with respect to the first report, the annual financial report, we wanted to highlight some points from the management's discussion and analysis. I mean, basically the financial statements, they're presented just to several tables, a few that cover the agency-wide and then a few that cover the funds. And then there's some supplemental information regarding a comparison of budget to actuals for the operating and capital funds. But we don't do a full-blown CAFR, a comprehensive annual financial report, like you would see cities or counties do. We just do a standard set of financial statements. The MD&A is a required component of those financial statements, and basically we talk a lot about what the achievements were for fiscal year 22-23 and how we advanced the strategic plan. So covering items like closeout of the Feather River West Levee Phase 1, the completion of the federal project, completion of small community studies and portions of OW projects within the Orville Wildlife Area, completion of majority of the sediment removal construction, and successful support for the Feather River West Levee Financing Agency and their O&M assessment efforts, advancement of the Sutter Bypass, design of the Sutter Bypass East Levee and Tudor flood risk reduction projects, and then efforts working toward implementation of the development fee program. In total, we completed about $6.3 million of capital work. That's total capital expenses net of debt service. That represents a reduction of expenditures by about 4% relative to 21-22. Our revenues increased by about 7.6%. That's as a result of a receipt of a lot of revenue that from granting agencies from prior years, and some of those agencies catching up as we closed out projects or work toward closeout. So ultimately, our net position increased by about $8.5 million. Now, it's important to note our net position is significantly negative. Our net position, basically our equity position in as an agency, as an entity, went from negative about $49 million to about negative $40 million. And the reason is because all the assets that we invested our capital in when we incurred debt, we've taken those assets, completed that work, and given it to the local maintaining agency or the state. So we bonded for projects, incurred a bunch of debt, invested that into assets, physical work on the ground, and then said, okay, it's now someone else's problem. And so that was always to be expected. It does not representation of the health of the agency. Our mission is to build projects and turn them over to the state or local maintaining agencies. Actually, the fee title interest in the ground goes to the state, Sacramento-San Joaquin Drainage District. The other remaining component of the MD&A, we talk a little bit about the continued advancement of the agency's strategic plan and the financial ability to continue that work. Again, so this audit was prepared by Badawi and Associates. It's their 6th year of providing the audit. We leveraged the City of Yuba City's qualifications and selection of their auditor. They've extended their contract with Badawi. I think they had, a lot of that might be because of the changeover in management with the agency, with the retirement of several years ago of Robin Bertagna, and just staffing, the ability to get a new auditor on board. It takes a lot of work, and that's why when you engage an auditor, you generally have them for several years. We're going to continue to follow right behind the way the selection process of Yuba City. But we do that under a separate engagement with our auditor. Again, so their report on our financial statements, which they help prepare, I've excerpted some language, but this is the sentence you always want to look for. It'll be the same in just about every audit that you look at from a public agency. This is our opinion. The financial statements represent fairly in all material respects the financial position of the agency in accordance with GAAP. So once you get that sentence, there's probably not much more you really need to clean out of it. With respect to the auditor's communication letter, they talk about their audit process and where their estimates could impact conclusions, and they make statements directly to the board regarding the results of the process that they implemented. Some of those things that I think are good to mention: encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management, performing their audit, and then any misstatements that were identified as a result of their audit process, which we don't believe there were any, but they said if they had found any as a result of their audit process and corrected by management, none of those statements were material, either individually or even in the aggregate, to the financial statements taken as a whole or applicable opinion units. So if they found that a few numbers were off, they're not material misstatements. And then in terms of their any disagreements, they encountered no disagreements during the course of their audit. The final report that was regarding our processes and internal controls. Typically, if you had any recommendations for internal controls from a prior year, they would address in the successive year how we address those. We haven't had any recommendations on internal controls for many years now. And then their procedures are designed around making sure that we're implementing our internal controls and that they're effective and that they don't result in any misstatements. And they say in that report to you, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be material weaknesses. So our processes are working, and they agree with them, and we've been implementing them well, and that results in a financial statements that are clean and clear and fairly represent the agency's financial position. So the next steps with the audit now would be for the board to accept that, and we will take that audit and provide it to our bondholders, which is a requirement of our obligations with respect to our bonds, and post it to the website and make it all available to all to read and enjoy.
Okay, so anything else, Michael? So we can accept that without a motion, is that correct? Okay, congratulations on an audit with no exceptions and no derogatory remarks. And also thanks for the information of the negative position that we continue to have, even though we're gaining on it, right? Right,
yeah, we would expect, we'll continue to build on that net position will decrease as we amortize down our debt. And then to the extent that we build more projects, you'll see it grow. And then we'll move those projects off to the state, so it'll go negative again. But that's all part of what we're trying to do as a capital project agency.
We're just a charitable organization, aren't we? Okay, with that, are you going to have Sean do the financial report? Great. Thanks a lot, Seth.
Thank you.
John, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Seth. Do I just switch? How do I go back?
Everybody know Sean? Everybody knows Sean, right? That's Seth's boss, I think. Aren't you Seth's boss?
Yeah, so my name's Sean Myers. I've been working with Seth for, gosh, over 10 years now, and this is a wonderful opportunity for me. Thank you. Allow me to present this. So our monthly financial report this month just covers through the end of January of 2024. Our ending working capital was about 24 million, but that is for all transactions that had been completed and fulfilled. 25.9 million would include those pending transactions, which we'll kind of dive into detail on. The revenue, so far we haven't posted any revenue to our operating fund, but there's estimated 750,000 pending due to some assessment revenue that we received in February that we've logged in. Same thing with the capital fund. We've received about 767,000 to date, and about 5.5 million pending, including that 767,000. So that total difference is about 5.4 million. Divided up, the revenue that we still have pending includes both assessment revenue that we received in February, as well as some state payments. And these tables here, the two tables, outline this a little bit better. I don't have a pointer, do I? Is this a pointer? Oh, really? Oh, look at that. Oh, wow. Modern technology. So again, about 5.4 million in pending revenue, but you can see here it's divided up between capital payments or state payments, about 1.6 million, and then assessment revenue pending is about 3.9 or 3.8. And then for this table here just outlines all pending packages for grant reimbursements that we're expecting to come through. And then moving on to expenditures, we've got about 1.4 million in expenditures through January, including that with about 2.6 million in pending costs. The table here also breaks down. Flashing there. It breaks down just sort of our pending costs. You'll notice that there's a negative balance for our Army Corps project. That's primarily due to a reimbursement that we had received and applied to our expenditures a few months back. And then for our debt service, we just made a payment for April's scheduled payment. Next payment will be in October for about 3.9 million. Pending projects. So I mean, we saw through the previous graph and the table there that there are a number of different grants that we have open and that we're consistently asking for reimbursement on. Next round of those will be in April. And then a few new ones will submit like a new package for City of Oroville services. The agency itself, just various grants that we'll continue to request reimbursement on, and the continuing disclosure report, which is due March 31st, but I think we're pretty well on track to get that submitted a little bit early. And then we've just started formulating an agency budget. There'll be a preliminary meeting and discussion on it, or presentation on it actually to the board come May, and then finalization would be in June. Any questions?
I have a question. Sean, I don't know if it's for you or for Michael. When I look at our revenue stream, I don't think any of us that are in business for ourselves would be doing business with anyone that was fiscally as upside down as the state of California. So do we have any concerns on our receivables coming from the state where we're expecting revenue? And I don't know which of you is better to address this, but if it was a private business thing, I would be concerned.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And no, I'm not concerned because the grants that we have with various state agencies, those monies have already been set aside in their budgets. So it's not money going forward. It's already money that they have and reserved for these projects. So Seth, I don't know if you want to handle that any more so, but no, I'm not concerned.
Just echo what Michael says is that the grant programs are obligations from prior year budgets, and so they can't re-obligate that money. I mean, if there was a situation where there was a grant that was maybe multiple years, that needed appropriations each year, that would be a concern. But none of these are like that. I mean, there is always standard language in the terms of the grants that says, subject to the availability. But I don't think we're in a situation where we're saying that the state isn't fulfilling its obligations from prior years. They're looking at they don't have enough revenue to continue the programs that they've had in the past in future years.
Sorry to be a nervous Nelly on that. When I look at their financials, it makes me pretty nervous.
If I could add to that too, if there's any delay in payment that we expect from the state, it's usually because of some procedural reason in the submittal, not necessarily, I've never encountered any state agency to say, we're abandoning payment for, some non-procedural reason. Any other questions?
Sometimes it takes the state of California a while to get us our money.
Yes, well, certainly.
Yes. Okay. With that, we will move on to the present. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the presentation of the project update. Michael?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yep, this is our last presentation of the meeting. And I failed to, when Sean got up there, I wanted to let the board know that even though Sean is fairly new making presentations to the board, he's been working for this agency for like 10 years. So he's behind the scenes at LWA. He's been working with Tara and all our project managers to package all of our projects and get reimbursements through whatever grants that we have. So we have multiple grant sources, and Sean's been working on that, plus our agency budget. So he's been working for Sabufka for many, many years. Okay, so with that said, this is the program project update. And I've kind of restructured my presentation a little bit just to package all the levee improvement projects on the first two slides. So the first one is the closeout of the Feather River West Levee Project 1. So we're still in the process of closing out our environmental mitigation obligations with the state through the resource agencies for our Starbend and Matthews elderberry mitigation site. So we're getting very close to the end. One of the items on our consent agenda was a small amendment with Sac Valley Conservancy to finalize the work needed to complete this process. Also, on our cultural resources mitigation, I think I informed the board last month I was going to be having a field meeting with representatives from the Enterprise Rancheria. And we did that last week out in the field for the repatriation of a lot of artifacts and materials that we're taking out of the levee back when we were doing our levee improvement project. And all of those materials have been studied. That was part of our mitigation for the project. And we're working with the tribe on the repatriation of those materials. So we met on site where the tribe had repatriated human remains back in like 2017, I think, or 16. And we're going to utilize that same site and repatriate these artifacts in the same general location, which I'm not going to talk about. But so that was a really positive meeting, and we're going to do that work at the end of flood season, so at late April, early May timeframe. We're also finalizing our right-of-way acquisitions. There's 2 outstanding still that we're working through, some minor issues, and then turning over all of those properties to the state and closing out our funding agreement formally. So, and then the one item in red, so relief well repair, I think I talked to the board about as part of LD1's O&M activities to maintain the relief wells that were constructed by Sabufka as part of our levee improvements. They encountered what appeared to be like sediment or materials in those wells. And we had our design team go out there and do investigations and work with LD1's contractor who was doing the cleaning work for those wells. And we found out that the materials were biological in nature, so it sort of solidified in the well, and that's why they weren't able to get their depth measurements down there, because they encountered that's what appeared to be solid material. But once that material was hydrated, adding water to the wells, it solidified. I mean, it desolidified. It went into solution and was able to get pumped out. But we took samples of that material, and it appears to be biological in nature. So our team's putting together a protocol. We're going to be testing those wells annually to monitor them in advance of the 5-year cleaning that LD1 will need to do, 5 years from now. We're also, there was also, when those wells were constructed, they weren't, the manhole covers themselves to access the relief well were offset slightly. So we have to go in and modify those manhole covers. So our team is putting together some bid documents. We're going to go out and get a contractor and get that work done this summer. So I wanted to highlight that in red. On our Feather River West Levee Project 2, the Tudor Flood Risk Reduction Project, we are at the 90% design stage. Those documents have been reviewed by our state, federal, and federal partners and our independent panel of experts. They've provided some comments back to our design team, and our team is working on addressing those comments. We continue to work with the local tribe, that's the United Auburn Indian community, on this project. We're advancing our environmental permits, our 408 regulatory process with the Corps, and we're targeting for this project construction next year. So we're hoping to finalize our design, our bid documents at the end of this year, go out to bid, open bids early next year, and then take a construction contract to this board in February. So we want to get a contractor on board early next year, because there is a submittal process, a couple of months of submittals and a lot of paperwork before you can start breaking ground. So we'd like to do that February, March, April timeframe, and then break ground in May of next year. So that's the process for this project. Also wanted to notify the board, I had a meeting yesterday. There's a Public Law 8499 repair within our project limits. That's a federal emergency repair process. The Army Corps, in partnership with the state of California, is looking to implement this project. And what it is, there's a landside irrigation ditch, and there's some sloughing in that ditch. And the state maintenance area 3, when they were maintaining that levee back before they turned it over to LD1 to maintain, they submitted those damages to the federal government to get federal funding to make those repairs. So we're coordinating that work with the state, the Corps, and the landowner, because the landowner is involved, will be involved in that process one way or another. So we're closely monitoring that and participating in those discussions. And then lastly, on this slide, the Sutter Bypass East Levee repair, we're at a 30% design stage level. Those documents did go out to our state and federal partners and our IPE for review. We're addressing those comments now, advancing the environmental and permitting process. And I wanted to note on this slide, I have the FEMA BRIC and FMA applications. So that FEMA administers 2 funding programs. The BRIC program is, and I'll read that out for you, Todd. It's the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, and then the FMA is the Flood Mitigation Assistance. So 2 different grant programs administered by FEMA. And we submitted this project, the 5-mile repair, into that program. And we had to go through Cal OES, and it's a pretty exhaustive process to get through that process. And for them to say, yes, this project is suitable for California to submit to FEMA, and they have made that designation, and they submitted our project to both those grants. So, fingers crossed. It's going to take probably 6 months before we know if we're successful, but that's really the only funding opportunity we have right now for construction of the project. Next slide, please. And these are the other levee repair projects we're involved with. So City of Orville levee repair. I previously notified the board that we partnered with the city to submit an application to the Army Corps through a program that they have for disadvantaged communities who have non-federally authorized levees, which is what the city qualifies for, in order to get a feasibility study performed by the Corps at no cost to the locals. And so we submitted that application, and we hear that the Corps should be making some decisions on that opportunity later this month. So we're communicating with city staff so that they'll be the first ones to hear, because the application was submitted in their name. So we're keeping our fingers crossed to see if they're successful. The other item we've been looking at is state funding, and as Charlie noted earlier, the state budget is not in a positive situation right now. So there's really no funding opportunities with the state government for that project. But we're keeping our eyes open and keeping in constant communication with DWR. And then on the federal project, the Tudor Road to Cypress, I've been calling it Starbend to Laurel. It's, that 5-mile project. We will be completing punch list repair work this summer on the Feather Water District facilities. Those were the vaults that were filling up with water. The Corps wasn't able to get their contractor to do the repairs properly, so they provided Sabufka with some funding to take care of that. So we're going to be putting our bid docs together and getting out there this summer. It'll be late summer, early fall. We're timing it with Feather Water District's irrigation obligations so that we can get in there and do the work that needs to be done. And then, like I noted in the previous presentation on the PPA amendment, we're working with SJAFCA to finalize our credit sale to that agency. And I'll be taking an item to this board next month for the to get the first deal details. I'll be providing those to the board for the board's consideration next month. And I have reached out to all the board members here to provide a briefing, personal briefing, or however you want to have it done, to provide details of that negotiation. So please, if you haven't already had that briefing and you want it, please reach out to me. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are our planning and design projects. So OWA Robinson's Riffle project, that's the planning grant that we received from DWR. We have a second workshop that's going to be happening next week. And that's where we'll be meeting with all our state partners, so DWR, CDFW, Wildlife Conservation Board, and then federal, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and other stakeholders in the region to talk about what projects make the most sense up in that Orville wildlife area. So we're mostly focused on flood stage reduction. The regulatory groups are looking at environmental restoration and enhancements to fisheries, those type of projects, and recreational improvements. So once that planning process is completed and we've identified a suite of projects, we're hoping to identify a project that we can advance with the money that we've received from CDFW, $2.1 million to advance a project through design and permitting. So that's what's happening up in the OWA Robinson's Riffle. Associated with that is the Thermalito Afterbay Boat Ramp and Campground Project. So we have two grant sources, CDFW and WCB, in right around $7.7 million. So we're advancing to a 90% design level for that project, taking it through design and permitting with the target of construction next year. So that project is advancing, and I know Chris has provided this board with a pretty detailed presentation on that project, and we'll do that again later this year when the time is right, when we get to close to bid document time. On our sediment removal project, we're still waiting to hear about our NOAA grant. We submitted it, a little over $10 million for that project. Board member Matt Conant and I met with the Yuba Water Agency last month in February to talk about that project, see if there was any funding opportunities through YWA. We'll keep those dialogues going. There isn't anything right now, but we'll continue to coordinate with the Yuba Water Agency on this project. And then lastly on this slide, the RFMP, Regional Flood Management Planning. That's a grant that we received from DWR. It helps us participate in the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan update, which the Central Valley Board has to do every 5 years. And they use DWR to advance that work. But we as locals participate in that process through this grant. So we're basically paid by the state to participate. And we're also able to advance other regional projects that would benefit our region and our agency. And those are the projects I listed there. Our Phase 4 grant is almost expired. We don't have much money left. It'll probably last us a couple more months. And we're looking for a Phase 5 grant, which is budgeted. So the state does have that money budgeted. And we'll be hoping to finalize that new grant probably latter part of this year, early next year. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide, and then I'll turn it over for questions. So on our FEMA remapping of Sutter County, so good news, we completed the package. So Chris Fritz and his team completed the package. We've held meetings with Sutter County staff and Yuba City staff and Live Oak staff so that they're fully briefed on this process. This is for our basin, so not outside of our basin within Sutter County, but specific to what we call the Yuba City Basin, the basin that was affected by our Feather River West Levee project. So that remapping package has been submitted to FEMA. So they just got it last week, and we'll keep the board apprised. What typically happens is FEMA, they'll have a consultant review the package. They'll reach out with questions. There'll be a lot of back and forth addressing questions that they have. And then it's going to be probably a 3 to 5 year process to finalize that effort. So it takes a long time. Our Butte County remapping took exactly 3 years, but that was a much smaller package. This one's much larger and more complicated. On our regional development impact fee, that's been approved by all our land use agencies. The fee becomes effective next month. So we're finalizing all of our communications with staff at all of our land use agencies so that everybody's fully briefed. And we'll look forward to seeing that come to fruition starting next month. And then lastly, I've had this slide. I'll have it probably for next month also, and that'll be out of flood season. But, we've been watching this year's flood season. At the beginning of the year, everybody was talking El Nino and, could it be a crazy year? Could it be a very wet precipitation year? Nobody knows, And as it is, it's looking like it's going to be an average precipitation. Looks like we have average snowpack, average precipitation, which is great. There was flooding in SoCal. So it all depends on where these atmospheric rivers are targeted and where they go and how long they last over an area. So it's really going to be dynamic as we move forward. And, we talk climate change and not sure where things are going to go from here. But obviously, we're going to keep a very close eye on every winter that comes and close communications with DWR and the Corps and the Yuba Water Agency as they regulate their dams and reservoirs. So interesting year, but, luckily, we haven't seen high flows in the Feather at all. It's been very average. We never hit flood stage. I think we got very close at the very bottom end, but it never triggered that. So maybe Drew has, I don't know, Drew, if you want to say a few words to this topic, but at the end of the day, it's been an average year in terms of precipitation Drew?
Yeah, LD1 and even the southern part of LD1, the area in MA3, which is usually prone to flood stage first, it got within 3 to 5 feet. So there was no patrolling that occurred this year so far.
Thank you, Drew. Knock on wood. Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's it. I'll turn it over for any questions.
Okay, questions? Okay, seeing none, I guess we'll adjourn. See everybody next month.